So we have Steve MacMurray. Steve is Digital Media Development Manager at Globecast. Just next to Steve is... just help yourself to the microphone.
Thank you.
Just next to Steve is Glodina Lostanlen, Chief Process Officer at Imagine Communications. And on the end we have Geoffrey Crespin, Senior Solutions Architect, Live Video Production Security at EVS. Thank you all very much for joining us today. So between you and your organisations, you've got great experience and knowledge, obviously, across the content value chain and from production through to distribution. So I wanted to start at the production end, if we may. Geoffrey, content security has risen in terms of being a priority for EVS over recent years. Why is that? What's happened to make that more of a priority for the organisation?
Yes, thank you. Good question indeed. And not only for content security, we are also talking about cyber security. It's a top priority for EVS, and I see different reasons for that. First of all, the general attack surface is changing a lot. So if you remember the attack during the Olympics in Pyeongchang, it was a really serious attack. And then we realized that, okay, if you break the system, you lose everything. If there is no signal to broadcast, you lose everything. So thanks to the top management at EVS, we decided almost 3 years ago to really focus on cybersecurity because we don't want to be the weakest link in the chain, in the production chain. And so we have to work on our product itself. So we have to develop and to provide secure products. It's one point. But we have also to help our customers to secure the workflows, to secure the way they operate the EVS products. So this is the first reason. And then we are also collecting a lot of information, discussing with customers. And yeah, they report a lot of ransomware attack today. So the threat actors are also targeting a lot of our customers. And I'm not only talking about sports events or football competition. I'm also talking about big broadcasters and TV channels also. They are really targeted by ransomware. So we have to do something. We cannot leave it like that. And also that's the reason why we decided to provide cybersecurity services to help the customer really to prepare, to be prepared. Because as I said, it's a new way of working, of course, but it's a moving target. And when you have this type of moving target, you have to anticipate. You cannot act when it's done. It's too late. So you have to anticipate and work in advance. And that's exactly what we are doing at the moment at TVS.
Thank you. And Glodina, Imagine obviously has a broad portfolio, works across a whole range of that content value chain, as we spoke about before. Can you just give us a sense of what the area of focus is in terms of cybersecurity, content protection, and why that might be as well?
Yes, first, thank you, George, and good afternoon, everybody. So at Imagine, we have, as you said, a broad portfolio. So in fact, we've developed quite a experience with our customers on the monetization side, the advertising piece, the channel origination or play out. And more and more, obviously, the question comes up in live production environment. It's really recognizing that those cases exist, that there are tools to leverage to avoid or to mitigate those attacks, but there's also a level of awareness that needs to increase, I think, especially in the production environment where more IP signals are going to come in. And in fact, the good news there is that IP doesn't mean necessarily lower security. In fact, if you leverage the tools developed from cloud environments, you should be able to apply good practices and sort of get the knowledge to the level that you need in IP. But definitely advertising, ransomware examples happened, channel origination, all of a sudden a control room is taken over by an attack. That is what happened a few years ago, so it's real. And so we have to make sure the whole chain is protected.
And Steve, Globecast obviously sits towards the end of that chain with legacy in fiber and satellite. Obviously, a shift now to IP and cloud. So what challenges does that bring for your organisation when we're talking about this particular subject?
Absolutely. I mean, just to pick up on the point there, there's a kind of conception that maybe going into the world of IP and cloud delivery is in some way kind of more open and scary. And I don't think that necessarily is the case. There's kind of a broader toolkit almost available to you. Globecast coming from a strong traditional satellite and fibre delivery heritage. We're used to dealing with lots and lots of lovely football. To use a football analogy, we want to be seen as a bit like, I suppose, a goalkeeper as a safe pair of hands. And we want to continue that into the paradigm shift of IP cloud distribution. So obviously we have the kind of heritage solutions of satellite encryption, BIS-CA, which is incredibly strong, very robust, and we take our responsibilities very, very seriously. We're B2B, as you say, in terms of the transmit chain. We're, I suppose, from the venue to the broadcasters. And we're trying to apply that same level of scrutiny and robustness to IP cloud distribution models. And as Glodina said, there's even more of a bigger toolkit, right? There's DRM, there's watermarking. In some ways, it's almost more accountable. So there's more at your disposal, which is great because we're all in this fight together, and we want to kind of make sure that these high-value properties stay high value and nobody gets it for free.
So is it more of a perception issue then, rather than a sort of genuine concern, would you say, in terms of that IP and cloud narrative?
In terms of a perception issue, yeah, I suppose so. As we've seen a sort of paradigm shift in our particular part of the business from the traditional satellite fibre to IP, it's kind of taking people with you, I suppose, and making that known and knowing that those encryption systems are just as robust, and we're taking the responsibility that we've always taken in order to deliver that safely. But yeah, it is a constant fight, isn't it? And as we see, I suppose, moving from the hardware model of traditional kind of satellite delivery to the software as service model of IP cloud, there's a different kind of shift in terms of how quickly you can update and how you can kind of keep up with the fight.
I'd like to try and understand a little bit more about the type of threats and where they're coming from as well, and your thoughts on that. So can you give me a sense of, and it's something that you've already touched on, Geoffrey, when you spoke about Pyeongchang. What is the motivation for these kinds of attacks? Where is it coming from? And yeah, how do you kind of characterize them?
Yeah, it's difficult to say because we are only collecting information about the tentative of attacks. So there is no always clear indication of who is attacking us or who is attacking the customer. We have what we call the smoking guns. So we have to analyze let's say the indicator of compromise, and then based on that, we have to correlate different type of information to say, okay, maybe, or most probably it's coming from this threat actor or not. But just talking about Euro 2020, for instance, during that competition, we installed a sniffer in the network, monitoring traffic going to the EVS solutions. And we have detected a lot of information coming from, let's say, well-known threat actors. At that time, it was used a lot against governmental organization, but we have also detected tentative attacks during this football competition. So, I mean, there is no only one threat actor targeting the football competition, but we see also a lot of bad guys interested just to break the system.
So is that just, I suppose, maliciousness, just trying to disrupt, or are there kind of commercial aims at the heart of that? Is that kind of ransomware type scenario?
Yeah, of course. When they target a broadcaster or a TV channel, they are interested, of course, by the money to install ransomware and then collect the ransom. But when we are talking about big sport events, they are interested to just break the system. So if you remember, you have the famous CIA triad in security. So we have to protect confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the data. And during the sport events, they are interested to break the availability of the system. And for us, that's the main threat today, the availability of the signal, in fact.
Yeah, so indeed, we have examples where a large group station group, in America was attacked a couple of years ago almost now in their ability to release advertising, and so they were blocked. All their financial systems were blocked. It's pretty significant, and that has a direct impact on the cash machine, right? So the intent was clear. So yeah, I think that it's all form, and then I think a lot of us here will remember a few years ago the TV5 Monde example, which also was very shocking, where they directly, this was a terrorist attack, obviously, taking over the server where the playout was happening. So this is, major kind of event that have really strong consequences. So in that example, and maybe some of you know, but the takeaway, if I remember correctly, was that there was a mix of corporate IT network mixed with IT network sort of organizing the server connection. So you could think, oh well, that should be easy to fix, but in general, that's actually what usually happens, is basic practices that you should put in place to avoid or to reduce the risks of corporate IT practices that you need to apply into your broadcast environment.
I think those are really good points. I think we also need to kind of make the distinction that there's a difference between the attacks and actual kind of pirating the content as well. I mean, it makes 100% sense to make sure that you audit your network so you know who's accessing at any one time. And we'd be wise in the broadcast industry to take some of those principles and apply those to the way that we distribute. But then also you've got to look at the appetite for piracy as well. Why are people wanting to consume particularly premium sports events like football? What is the appetite there for? And we maybe need to examine those as well, because that's an important driver.
I was going to ask how the industry compares to other sectors that you might have experience of and that you might have worked in. I mean, obviously, sport, football in particular, very premium content, highly prized. How is the industry responding to those threats, and how does that compare to some of the other sectors that you might have worked in? Geoffrey, I know that you've worked in other areas before moving into media.
Yeah, I'm coming from the telco and the governmental environment, so I can say that I see a clear difference between what they do in the pure IT world. They share a lot of information about threat actors, about indicator of compromise, and they share information between competitors. Sometimes it's also the case. And let's say in the broadcast sector, we are not yet at that level. So, I mean, we have to improve, and we have a lot of things to do, but we have the tools. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can do it, yeah.
Yes, I think, like I touched on earlier, there is an awareness issue first, and to your point about our customers or the players in the industry, and there is a training gap there. I touched on that too, and probably when we talk about live content production in particular, since this is the topic here, I need to have a sort of cross. Interoperability topic on content protection across the chain, across the value chain. There's so much happening to that signal. I mean, the previous panel showed, everything you do to video and audio, and then you move it from so many places. So many opportunities, to just drop the ball on content protection across the chain. So I think that some of the initiatives we've seen when we introduced IP, SDI to IP, we had a lot of interoperability, a lot of standardization going on. I think that we have to think about that for content protection in the context of live production. I think in the context of distribution, there's a lot that has been going on, so it's probably more sort of enhancing those practices and educate everyone. And leverage what you said already exists.
Absolutely, I'd agree. I'd just say that security has always been embedded by design from the beginning, and we just want to have that transparency. Our little part of the transmit chain is here. we're kind of predominantly more B2B as opposed to B2C, but that doesn't mean we shirk our responsibilities in terms of how we operate together and have that level of transparency. I think that's a really valid point.
So would you say that that's the number one priority in terms of looking to guard against these threats? It's that greater collaboration, or are you looking for standardization so that all the way through that chain there is easier sharing of information, standards that people adhere to? What would you say are the really key priorities for making sure that that content is secure from production all the way through to distribution?
I guess it's opening your mind a little bit to a hybrid workflow. I mean, at the moment we're seeing for Globecast a big paradigm shift from traditional satellite and fibre to IP cloud distribution. That comes with its own set of challenges. There are two worlds that are kind of meeting, and we can both really learn from each other. There's principles in terms of delivering live events. It's very immediate, which is not necessarily fitting with all IT support. If you've ever had to take a ticket and kind of wait and kind of get your IT support. Sorry, I'm not dissing my IT colleagues now because I'm going to get cut out of the network. But we could be learning a lot from each other, from the immediacy, from the broadcast, and then there's also the auditing, there's the accountability that comes from the world of IT and IP.
Yeah. So even internally within organisations, not just across the industry.
100%. Yeah. It's I think we're seeing the edges blur, and it's that hybrid future that makes sense.
Right, and to pick up on hybrid, I think we've got to debunk the myth that cloud is going to make this more complicated. In fact, on the contrary, when you're in a hybrid network or environment like in IP production now, with some of it still SDI, some of it still IP, some of it going to the cloud, actually you can leverage cloud to be first your best disaster recovery option, right? So that's number one, okay. But second, you can leverage the tools like we discussed before and the best practices. So I think that we have that, if we follow that sort of practice of acknowledging the hybrid environment and dealing with it and leveraging the tools, then I think we're good. And I think the priorities are indeed that awareness first, to understand where the threats really are, and develop the best practice to overcome them.
Great. And Geoffrey, just finally from you.
I fully agree. So yeah, we are fighting the same people, so we have to collaborate. And also good collaboration between internal IT and the broadcast engineers is key from my point of view. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, well, hopefully that's a bit of a rallying cry to everyone here. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for, so please join me in thanking the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, George.